we'd like to interview you about your soap making career.
Okay.
Okay. Why did you decide to start a soap making career?
It's not something that I just decided I was going to do one day. It's more something that fell into my lap. Whenever I'd go to craft fairs, I'd always gravitate towards the soap tables and the people selling soap. And I was just enthralled with the idea of making my own. So I just decided that I was going to try it too. If they can make soap, I'm going to try it too. And so I just watched a bunch of YouTube videos and learned the basics. And so I made my first batch, just, a few bars of soap, and I was hooked. I loved making soap. And then I'd post a few pictures on Facebook, and it was just a hobby. I was just making it for myself, but it kind of evolved into a much bigger hobby.
Cool.
Yep.
What ingredients do you use?
I use a lot of different ingredients. So a lot of them I try to source locally. Soap basically is oils mixed with sodium hydroxide, and once you combine those two together, it makes soap. And so you can use any kind of oil you want. I use coconut oil, olive oil. I use goat milk as a water replacement. And then for colors and stuff, I only use natural ingredients. For example, I am also a dietitian, so I wanted to incorporate food and spices and herbs into the soap because there also are some benefits for the skin from some of these sources and herbs and stuff. So for example, to get a green, I will add organic spirulina, which is really a superfood. So to get my green, to get a brown, I add organic cocoa powder. I add poppy seeds for exfoliation purposes. So I like to incorporate, because I'm a dietitian, I like to incorporate food into the soap naturally, because it may be a benefit to the skin as well. So those are just some of the ingredients I use. I also like to use clays, like rose clay, Brazilian clays, just all sorts of great stuff.
Where do you get your ingredients?
Some of my ingredients I do need to get from online, and they get shipped to my house. So the coconut oil I order online, and the olive oil, because those aren't things that I can get locally. But the things that I am able to get locally, I get. So I am able to get organic lard that I render down the lard myself, and I'm able to use it in soap. And I get that from a neighboring farm. Tallow, the same thing. I get the tallow from cows, and I render that down, and I'm also able to use that. I source, if I use eggs or goat's milk, that's all locally sourced. So if I have a source locally available, I will go to that first, and if I can't find it here, I will look elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. When did you start making soaps?
When? I think it's been about 4 years. I've been making soap for about, 3.5 years.
Oh,
yep.
That's a long time.
Yes, it's gone by so fast.
What supplies, materials do you use?
For, talking for soap making equipment, I use 5-gallon buckets to make my soap. So I make my soap in big gallon, like a big bucket, and I'm able to, and then I have a big wooden mold that I use, and I just pour the soap into. My brother had made me that mold, and so I can make about 50 bars to one batch. I use other equipment that I use. I should have mentioned this first, is safety equipment. So I always wear goggles. I always wear a nice thick apron, and I always wear gloves, because although the finished product is very safe to use, when you're actually making the soap, it's very alkaline. And it can cause a lot of burns. So I'm very careful not to splash on my skin. I'm very careful not to splash in my eyes. So with the goggles, it's the sodium hydroxide, which is also known as lye. That's what makes soap making, it can be dangerous if you're not following proper safety protocols.
Mm-hmm. Oh, in what ways is your product connected to Maine?
Okay, well, in the way that it's connected to Maine is that I'm from Maine and I'm making the soap in Maine. A lot of the ingredients that I use are also sourced from Maine. One of the things that I have used that are unique to the area, I've used fiddleheads. I've juiced fiddleheads and put that into the soap. And that was one of my first soaps that I ever made, and it was a disaster. And it didn't smell too good because the fiddlehead juice burned because the soap gets really hot. Other stuff that I use that are unique to the area is potato water. So I'll cook organic potatoes, and then with the water that the potatoes are cooked in, I add that to my soap. And the reason why I do that when I can is because the starch in the potato water increases the bubbles of your soap. It'll increase the lather and make it really extra bubbly and full of lather. Other ingredients that I've used that are local to our area are buckwheat flour. So the flour that's used to make ploys and stuff. I add that, and it turns the soap yellow of all things. And I think that's because of its high vitamin B6 content, which turns things yellow. And so instead of adding like oats as an exfoliation, I just use the buckwheat powder. So that was another unique ingredient that I